Hello and welcome to Declutter. Today we read diving into one of the most powerful and thought-provoking nonfiction books of recent times, Everything Is Tuberculosis by John Green. Now you might be wondering, tuberculosis? Isn't that an old disease, something from history books? The surprising truth is, tuberculosis is not just a disease, it's a story about humanity itself. It's about science, inequality, survival, and what it means to live in a world where invisible forces shape our lives. John Green, who many of you know from The Fault in Our Stars or his Crash Course videos, brings us a deeply personal and historical look at TB. He connects the dots between the past and the present, showing us how this one disease has influenced medicine, culture, politics, and even art. And here's the twist: while TB may sound like a medical topic, this book is really about life. It's about how we deal with suffering, how we find meaning, and how we keep going even when faced with overwhelming challenges. In this video, we'll walk through the key ideas from Everything Is Tuberculosis, explained in simple language with real examples. By the end, you'll not only understand the history and science of TB, you'll see how it reflects something much bigger about being human. So let's begin our journey into this powerful story. Tuberculosis, often called TB, has been with humanity for thousands of years. In fact, archaeologists have found evidence of it in Egyptian mummies from over 4,000 years ago. It's been called many names throughout history: consumption, phthisis, or simply the White Plague. Why those names? Because TB slowly consumed people from the inside out. Victims would cough, lose weight, grow pale, and often die after months or years of suffering. It wasn't quick, it was slow, visible, and terrifying. By the 18th and 19th centuries, TB became one of the deadliest diseases in the world. In Europe alone, it was responsible for 1 in 4 deaths. It shaped art and literature too. Writers like Kafka, poets like Keats, and even musicians like Chopin were touched by TB, either suffering from it themselves or losing loved ones to it. Here's something fascinating. In that era, TB was strangely romanticized. People saw the pale, fragile look of those suffering as a kind of tragic beauty. It was thought to bring sensitivity, creativity, even passion. Imagine that, a deadly illness being turned into a cultural symbol. But behind the poetry and paintings, the truth was brutal. TB thrived in overcrowded cities, among the poor, in places where sanitation and nutrition were lacking. It wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a social disease, exposing the inequalities of the time. And here's where John Green's narrative shines. He reminds us that TB isn't just about microbes, it is about the systems we live in. Disease has always been tied to poverty, housing, and access to care. That was true centuries ago, and it's still true today. So, what exactly is tuberculosis? At its core, TB is caused by a bacterium called Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It's tiny, invisible to the eye, but incredibly powerful. The way it spreads is deceptively simple. When a person with active TB coughs, sneezes, or even talks, they release droplets carrying the bacteria. Another person breathes it in, and just like that, the infection begins. But here's the twist: most people who inhale the bacteria don't get sick right away. Instead, TB has this unique ability to go silent. It hides inside the body, usually in the lungs, and waits. Doctors call this latent TB. You can carry it for years, even decades, without knowing. But under stress, poor health, or weakened immunity, it can wake up and become active disease. This is part of why TB has been so hard to fight. It's not like the flu, where symptoms come quickly. TB can linger in the shadows, spreading quietly through communities before anyone realizes it. And even when it's active, treating it isn't easy. Unlike many infections that clear up with a week of antibiotics, TB demands months of treatment, often 6 months or more, with a cocktail of powerful drugs. Why so long? Because the bacteria are stubborn. They have thick, waxy walls that resist many medications, and they reproduce slowly, making them harder to wipe out completely. And then there's the big problem of resistance. Over time, TB has evolved strains that don't respond to standard drugs. This creates multi-drug resistant TB, a nightmare for doctors and patients alike. Treating resistant TB can take up to 2 years, with strong drugs that have painful side effects. John Green explains this complexity in a way that reminds us TB isn't just a medical puzzle, it's a human challenge. It demands persistence, resources, and global cooperation. One of the reasons Everything Is Tuberculosis is so powerful is because John Green doesn't just write as a historian or a science communicator. He writes as someone who knows what it feels like to live with illness. John has spoken openly about his struggles with chronic health conditions and mental health. He understands what it's like to feel fragile, to feel like your body or your mind isn't fully under your control. That personal experience makes his writing about TB feel different, more compassionate, more human. In the book, he draws parallels between the suffering caused by TB and the universal experience of vulnerability. He reminds us that illness is never just biological, it's emotional, social, and deeply personal. For John, TB becomes more than just a disease. It's a symbol of how human beings live with uncertainty and pain, and yet continue to search for meaning and connection. Just as TB shaped culture in the past, illness of all kinds continues to shape our stories, our relationships, and even our creativity today. By weaving his own perspective into the larger narrative, John doesn't just inform us, he invites us to feel. He asks us to think not only about microbes and medicine, but also about compassion, solidarity, and what it means to live in a world where no one is invincible. Now let's bring the story into the present. You might think tuberculosis is a problem of the past, something solved long ago. But here's the shocking truth. TB is still one of the world's deadliest infectious diseases today. Every year, around 10 million people fall ill with TB and more than 1 million die from it. That's more than HIV and malaria in some years combined. It's not just history, it's happening right now. So why haven't we defeated it yet? The answer lies in inequality. TB thrives in the same conditions it always has: poverty, overcrowded housing, poor nutrition, and weak healthcare systems. It is not evenly spread across the world. It hits hardest in low and middle-income countries where access to medicine and doctors is limited. Even though treatments exist, many people can't complete them because the process is long, expensive, and exhausting. Imagine having to take pills every day for 6 months while also trying to work, feed your family, and deal with side effects. For many, it feels impossible. And when treatment is interrupted, the disease not only comes back but also becomes resistant. This is where global health organizations come in. Groups like the World Health Organization and countless local nonprofits are fighting to make diagnosis and treatment more accessible. Scientists are also working on better drugs and even vaccines to finally control TB. But John Green reminds us that curing TB isn't just about science, it's about justice. It requires global cooperation, political will, and a recognition that health is a human right. Until poverty and inequality are addressed, TB will remain a stubborn shadow over humanity. At this point, you might be wondering why write an entire book about one disease. The answer is that tuberculosis is more than a medical condition. It's a mirror that reflects the human experience. John Green uses TB to ask bigger questions. How do we live with suffering? How do we stay hopeful when challenges feel endless? What does it mean to care for one another in a world where no one is safe from vulnerability? One of the most powerful lessons is resilience. TB patients in history often endured years of slow decline, yet many still wrote poetry, created art, and found joy. Today, people battling TB face enormous obstacles but also show incredible strength. Their lives remind us that even in pain, there can be dignity, creativity, and connection. Another lesson is community. TB has always shown us that no one can fight disease alone. From the sanatoriums of the past, where patients rested and recovered together, to the global campaigns today, TB reveals the importance of solidarity. Healing, whether from disease or from life struggles, is always a collective effort. And finally, TB teaches us about meaning. Illness forces us to confront fragility, but it also pushes us to ask deeper questions. What matters most? What kind of world do we want to build? For John Green, TB isn't just about microbes, it is about humanity's ongoing search for purpose in the face of suffering. And that brings us to the end of our journey through Everything Is Tuberculosis by John Green. We've seen how this ancient disease shaped history, science, and culture. We've learned how it continues to challenge us today, not just medically but socially and morally. And most importantly, we've discovered the deeper lessons it carries about resilience, compassion, and what it means to live meaningfully in the face of suffering. Tuberculosis may seem like just one disease, but in John Green's telling, it becomes a story about all of us. About how fragile we are, but also how strong we can be when we face challenges together. If this video gave you new insights, don't forget to like it, share it with a friend, and subscribe to Declutter for more book summaries that simplify complex ideas and bring clarity to your life. Thank you so much for watching. Stay curious, stay compassionate, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye for now.